No, we are almost all here. Okay. So, welcome back. I hope you have enjoyed the lunch break. I have to do kind of, it's not really an announcement, but I have to say a couple of things before starting that are written here. I need to put the pin. So, first of all, for all the speakers of today, so day 2, we would like to publish all the speeches on our YouTube channel for the workshop, but for doing so, we need your okay. So at the desk, there are forms to fill in to provide us permission of doing that, if you will, of course. It's not an obligation, but that would be great, because we are going to publish the entire second day on the channel for all the others, in case you agree with that. So I will ask to all the speakers of this morning and this afternoon, if this is okay with you, to go to the desk there and ask him for provide us permission for the publication of the videos. And that was the first thing. Second thing, we do have, you know, I talk about food and drink every time, I know, but we do have another coffee break in the afternoon. But before having our last coffee break of this event, I would like to ask you just to go on your left here, because we would like to take the picture of the event, okay, before the coffee break. So I will remind that when it's time, but just to say that this is something that we would like to do. And third thing, I am going to introduce 2 speakers for the next session. And even if I will be the moderator of the Q&A, it's pretty clear that it is not kind that I'm going to ask questions to them. So please, in case, prepare some questions for them at the very end, okay? Okay, so thank you for being here. Now is time to give the stage to Chiara Di Giambattista and Ivan Haibi, that are working at OpenCitations. Both of them are working at the University of Bologna, and they are Communication Director at OpenCitations and Chief Technology Officer of OpenCitations. They will present very briefly about the infrastructure and to provide some news about what we are going to implement in the next months. So please, the stage is yours.
Hi everybody, I'm Chiara Di Giambattista and I'm the Communication Director at OpenCitations. I'm the person who sent a bunch of emails to each of you. I'm sorry. Today, with my colleague Ivan, who is the CTO of OpenCitations, we are excited to introduce you to the work we are doing to support open research information. Okay. Wait. Oh, so it's not working. Ah, because you changed the setting. Ah, okay. But now it's working?
The speaker too.
Okay, now it's working. Okay, sorry. I want to start with a vision statement. The vision of a world where citation and bibliographic data are open, trusted, and free for everyone. A world connected by an impactful global network of research knowledge, fostering the transparency of its methods and discoverability of its information. OpenCitations is helping in building that world. And how is OpenCitations helping? Well, OpenCitations provides an enduring source of comprehensive, high-quality scholarly bibliographic and citation metadata, enables integration with complementary sources of open scholarly information, provides information in interoperable formats. And also, everything in OpenCitations is open, reusable, and aligned with open science principles. This is perfectly expressed in our mission statement, which is short but very powerful, since OpenCitations' mission is to harvest, openly publish, preserve, and provide accurate metadata on academic publications in formats that anyone can access and reuse for any purpose. But why are OpenCitations important? Well, OpenCitations citations in general connect ideas and give credit, and OpenCitations allow this connection to be open. In particular, the open access to aggregated citation data is essential for collaboration, discoverability, and research assessment. But for decades, this data has been controlled by commercial entities, and OpenCitations aims to change this status quo by making citation metadata openly available to support open science, to foster the creation of transparent metrics for academic evaluation. In particular, OpenCitations fully embraces the principles of open science, since its main priority is to keep its services, software, and data always open without charge. In particular, OpenCitations complies with the principles of the Initiative for Open Citations, the UNESCO Principles of Open Science, the Fair Data Principles, and the Principles of Open Scholarly Infrastructure. But we are not alone in this. We are part of a bigger movement, a great network of open science infrastructures, similar services, and projects which are focusing on the creation of a more equal and open research environment. And it's wonderful to have many representatives of this great network that I'm showing in this slide here in presence today with us. Also, we are included in many catalogs. In particular, we are a part of the IOSC European Node and the former IOSC Marketplace. Also, we are part of the InfraFinder tool developed by Invest in Open Infrastructure, which was mentioned by Catherine before. Also, we are part of the Open Air Service Catalog after our involvement in the Open Air Nexus project, and we are involved in the GIS Class and Subscription Manager. But now I'd like to focus a bit on the specific connection between OpenCitations and the Barcelona Declaration, which has been the main topic of this workshop. Since the launch of the Barcelona Declaration back to April 2024, OpenCitations has supported the Barcelona Declaration since we embrace its main commitments that are to make openness the default, to work with services and systems similar to OpenCitations, and to support the sustainability of infrastructure of open research information, and to support collective action to accelerate the transition towards openness. In particular, since its foundation in 2010, OpenCitations has consistently been advocating for actively contribution to the production of open research information. And also we have been developing an infrastructure which is needed to support the wide sharing and reuse across different diverse applications. In particular, we can consider open citation data not just as a type of research information, as this nice infographic from the Barcelona Declaration shows, but are also an enabler of research information. In particular, open citations are a fundamental requirement for bibliometrics and scientometrics domain for the creation of a reproducible metrics for research assessment exercises. Also, regarding the equity of open research information, open citations data coverage is multidisciplinary and global in scope. And Open Citations is actively involved in the advocacy for open citations and for open abstracts, as I showed in the previous slide. And also, now I will leave the stage to my colleague Ivan to deepen a bit this aspect on a technical perspective.
Okay, thank you, Chiara. So, yeah, I will give you some details, maybe technical details, and some numbers that we have in Open Citation. So the first thing that we have talked about is the coverage, of course. So first of all, OpenCitations currently have two collections, two data sets. So one is OpenCitation Meta, the other one is OpenCitation Index. So OpenCitation Meta is basically a database which stores the bibliographic resources metadata. Each bibliographic resource has its own identifier in OpenCitation, which is the OpenCitation Meta identifier called OMID. So this collection or this dataset holds and stores only the bibliographic resources. Then we have another collection or another dataset, which is the OpenCitation Index. Now, the OpenCitation Index stores the links between these resources. So the links, as you can imagine, are the citations that we have between these two resources, okay? So OpenCitation Index, as I said, stores only this link between these two resources. All the metadata associated to these resources must be taken from OpenCitation Meta and are stored in OpenCitation Meta. So currently, the sources that we have ingested in OpenCitations are these one that are represented in this table right here. So you can see Crossref, DataCite, PubMed, OpenAIRE, and the Japan Link Center. So these are the sources that are currently ingested in OpenCitation, and we are ingesting these sources from time to time. So on the first row, so up, I think this, okay, so this row right here represents the total number of citations coming from each of the sources, okay? So for instance, from Crossref, we have 750 million citations, okay? So these citations could be also in other sources, okay? This is not the citations that are only in Crossref. So we are, in this table, combining also the sources. So for instance, if you check the first group here, this one combines two sources. So if we look at Crossref and PubMed, for instance, the combination of these two sources give us back 465 million citations, okay? So the combination of these two sources give this number of citations. Now, this goes on, of course. We can combine 3 sources together or 4 sources together. And finally, the last row right here, gives the contribution, the individual contribution of each source, okay? So here, like we can say that in OpenCitation we have 2,155 million unique citations, okay? So in this count, Crossref give us only Crossref 1.2 billion citations. This is how we should read this table right here, okay? Of course, we are planning to ingest other sources. These are the current sources, but I think also Didier will talk about this later, but Matilda is one of these other sources that we are planning and we are working on to ingest as these other sources that we have here. Of course, this is not the only strategy that we are applying to include new resources inside the OpenCitations. Another strategy is built around a crowdsourcing strategy. So we are with PKP collaborating with us and with a research group at the IB Hanover for the creation of a software, a plugin for OJS to also enable and ingest the OJS citations inside OpenCitations. So the idea here is to create somehow a workflow which one could follow to somehow ingest these new citation coming from a crowdsourcing source inside OpenCitation. So this is basically the GitHub repository that is used to do this kind of job, and actually this kind of thing is done right now by a pull request. So we are working on somehow including this pull request as part of the workflow, which then convert these citations as metadata and links. And then we put them, of course, inside the collections that we have, Open Citation Index and Open Citation Meta. Of course, this kind of strategy is to enable higher coverage, of course, and interoperability of the whole method. Alongside this, we are working on another software called Heritrace. The idea here is to have a software that could be an editor for the bibliographic data, to track the provenance also of the data and all the changes that we have on the data. So we have like some kind of a friendly interface to work on this, on the metadata of the resources and on the provenance of these resources. So in this case, we are working more on the quality and the transparency, of course, of the data. All these kind of things, of course, must go along with an open science infrastructure. So we are currently also working on the definition of a workflow that could be adopted, of course, using existing technologies, existing software, to enable somehow the federation, isolation, and the distribution of the services of the infrastructure. So the idea here is that the infrastructure should not be one big container, but should be built from separated, distributed services that are combined in one place, okay? So the idea here is to enhance the reusability, the replicability, and the portability of an infrastructure like this. Of course, this goes also with the living will principle of POSI, right? So we have a plan on how to address, and we have some conditions that we can follow to somehow reproduce the infrastructure if the infrastructure for some reasons is wound down for some reasons, okay? So we have like, yeah, exactly, a processor, a workflow, a plan on how to rebuild this infrastructure. And currently, the case is that Open Citation is hosted by Unibob, so the University of Bologna. But this might not be the case in the future. So the idea is to have this kind of workflow that can be adopted by any person, any infrastructure, yeah, to rebuild the entire Open Citation infrastructure again, okay? So we are trying to defining some manifests, for instance, for the creation of a containerized software and a containerized services which are distributed and then all together work for building one infrastructure, which is Open Citations. Okay, so I talked about the data, how to access these data. Currently, of course, so Open Citation Index and Open Citation Meta have their dumps. So we are talking about not only the data, but also the provenance data of these data sets. So the formats available are the CSV, RDF, and Scholix. So one can download these data and are all, of course, in CC0 license. So one can download these data and elaborate them. And also a Sparkle endpoint. So for those who are technical experts, maybe on Sparkle query, they can use a Sparkle endpoint to query directly the data sets, as well as the REST APIs. So we have some REST API services that one can use for both the Open Citation Index and the Open Citation Meta to retrieve some data, okay? So references, citations, metadata, they are all available through these services in REST API. So there are like operations that one can use inside the REST APIs. These are some of our users. Of course, these are also people that are here, and we have talked also, Chiara talked before. So we have, for instance, DBLP that queries Open Citation on the fly to get some citations for some of the resources that they have. Pilot studies, like the one that used in Graspus. We have, here I put also Port Suggest as a tool that starting from a seed article, try to build a network around that article using the citations and the references hosted and stored in Open Citation. Of course, we are part of the catalog of OpenAir, so we're one of the services in OpenAir as well, and GoTriple, as we also have Angelo had mentioned before in the previous presentation. So I will leave the stage again to Chiara for more final thoughts.
Yeah. Talking about users, but also our community as a whole, I just wanted to focus a bit on the hard work of rebranding of OpenCitations, which we have done in the last year, which aimed mostly to better communicate our values and mission, but also to facilitate for our community the access to OpenCitations information. In particular, you may have noticed also on the graphics around this workshop, the new logo of OpenCitations, which reflects the values of OpenCitation in its core elements, which are the O for open, the C for citations, the I, which represents the curiosity of researchers, and the technical element, which is the citation markups, which also recalls the technical basis of OpenCitations. But also this is a spoiler, because in the next month, by the end of June, we will launch the new website of OpenCitations, which is part of the rebranding of OpenCitations and will be more intuitive to navigate for users and for the community as a whole, but also will display the information in a clearer way, will provide a complete information about OpenCitations community and partnerships, will also provide the access to the OpenCitations services, so will be like the main showcase for OpenCitations, including the technical aspect and the community one, and also will provide the access to the newsletter of OpenCitations, which will be newly announced during this next month, that will make it easier to stay in touch with our latest news. But everything I said, and also everything that also Ivan said about the technical infrastructure would not be possible without the work of many people which are currently involved in OpenCitations. You, as a community, could be involved in OpenCitations in many ways, in particular for the provision, annotation, correction of OpenCitations data, but also by giving us feedback to improve our software and services, or just to work together in the advocacy for open science. But also I want to focus on the fact that OpenCitations services generate no income, so every kind of financial support from the community goes to the people who are working day by day, sustaining and maintaining the technical infrastructure of OpenCitations, but also the community relations. So this is kind of an invite for the community and for you also to advocate for OpenCitations, because by supporting OpenCitations, you support open science. And that was the last slide, and thank you so much.
Okay, time for questions from the audience.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question for this interesting overview you gave from the sources and the different coverage of the sources. If I understand this correctly, this means you have different sources, let's say 70%, 50% or so consumed and added into OpenCitations. So not as a criticism, but just out of curiosity, can you elaborate a bit on what's holding you back to have 100% or so from all the sources you have there?
Oh, no. This is like, you mean the percentages that you see here, I think.
Yes.
These ones, like this. No, these are the percentage of the total citations in OpenCitations, not in Crossref. So this is not the number of percentages of citations in Crossref. This is the number that is inside OpenCitations, if I understand correctly.
Okay. Thanks.
If I may clarify here very quickly. So the point here is just to have a view of the number of citations we do have in OpenCitations and to provide a view of how much of these citations comes from the different sources. It's not about coverage of that source, but it's about how much comes from there. Exactly.
You collect citations from different sources. Do you deduplicate them? And how? I assume that you don't have a DOI for every pair of cited.
Well, that's a good question. The fact that we have exactly like two collections, so one is only for the metadata, and the bibliographic resource in the Open Citation meta is only identified by the OMID, which is an internal identifier. The other identifiers are a property as a metadata property. So we use that as a property, as a value, so to deduplicate these entities. So the fact that we can combine and say, okay, these two sources combination have the same citation is based basically on the other IDs that are part of the metadata. So these are stored as metadata inside the Open Citation meta. But for Open Citation, we use the OMID, which is the identifier that we are using to deduplicate all the entities, basically, if I understand correctly.
Sorry, we're all asking technical questions, but what I read in this slide a little bit is that within this structured metadata space, you're starting to see diminishing returns. I know it's early days, but do you have any sense of what the OJS project could deliver? Are we talking about twice as many citations, 10% more that we don't know about?
I will ask
how
the
big
boss.
is the dark matter?
I will take that. No, we didn't had. We have spoke with the various partners involved in that because we were interested exactly in knowing the let's say the potential result in putting it down, in developing and implementing it. It is something that we are trying to analyze, counting right now. So it's something that we are working on because we wanted to know how much is the possible impact for that. We know that there are a lot of instances of OJS that, of course, produce a different amount of new PDFs per year. The idea is to help, in particular, those publishers and journals that do not have capacity of doing the extraction and then publication of this metadata into open systems there. But no, we are analyzing the coverage of that here in this period.
Thank you, that was lovely. I know you've done this analysis before, but how does your coverage now compare with Scopus and Clarivate?
So I will take it again. You ask my questions.
The difficult answers.
You take my questions here. This is a easy questions with a difficult answer. First of all, because we do not have capacity to transparently measure that, because I have to be fully honest here, we do not have access to Web of Science and Scopus. So to measure that kind of thing, we should have available those kind of information, and then to measure, first of all, if the number, just the number of citations is comparable. That has been done a few years ago by an independent study by Alberto Martin on a subset of those citations, and he and colleagues showed that the coverage was approaching these two databases in terms of number of citations, but honestly, I do not have any updated value because of that. I cannot provide a transparent view about that. Having more than 2 billion citations seems to be a reasonable amount of citations available to be comparable with them, but I don't have a clear answer there. We have done some internal testing, though, in the recent months, so just to analyze, at least counting the number of citations that we do receive from Web of Science, or that are recorded in Web of Science and Scopus for what concerns the products by the University of Bologna, so an internal analysis in this kind, and compare it with the numbers that we have in Open Citations and the ratio, because we are dealing with ratio there. seems kind of comparable in terms of numbers, but I do not have a definite answer to that question because we don't have access to the raw data for doing the computation. Well, I can compare it with others, open sources, if you want, but not with. We didn't do that, but in general, yeah.
Here, Sylvia.
Okay. I think last question, and then we have to close. But if you have any questions.
Yeah, so my question focuses on the tech stack that you're using. And to what extent, or what steps are you taking to be able to cite these things that OpenCitations depends on? Yeah, so OpenCitations is using kind of software and other resources to offer the services that it does. And you could, in principle, be citing these things or tracking citations to these kind of things. And to what extent is that on the roadmap?
Go on.
I mean, we are tracking OpenCitation different kind of resources, not only just paper, even if they are the majority, that I have to confess. So journal articles and conference paper probably are the main part of the data set, but we do have also software data sets and so on. So to cite the things that we are using for the infrastructure, there are a few of them already included in our data set. Some of the sources, for instance, that we are using, we in principle could cite them directly by means of our data. We are working on extending that thing. Actually, there is Matteo somewhere. Ciao Matteo. Who is, and also Marta and also Lorenzo. Marta is here, Lorenzo is not here. We are working on software for doing citation extraction as well and extending also the coverage. And one of those is about extracting mentions to software and ideally to interlink it with software heritage, which will be very functional for adding the information that you are mentioning about the software and so on. So to do work for the next years, I think. Yeah. So, thank you. Thank you all. If you have other questions about it, we are around, let's say, during the workshop. So just please join us and poke us in